On this episode, we jump right into what it's like to travel during the holidays while there is a pandemic raging.
So if you want to hear a few crazy COVID Christmas stories from this very strange season, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee Pi Mai, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001, which means as of last week, I've been here for 36 years, although I didn't double check my math on that.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 21 years ago, fell in love with security guards who don't act like Nazis, so I never left.
I guess there's a story in there somewhere.
Dude, I'm going to tell the story in our next show, so listeners will have to listen in. But suffice it to say, there are some security guards in the United States who do act like Nazis.
Right. We should also note that if this show does sound a little bit different, it is because Ed is recording from the United States, and I'm in Bangkok.
That's right. I am in Ohio. And I've got a lot of Ohio stories to tell.
All right. Well, let's get the show on the road then.
Okay, we want to say a quick thank you to our first patron of 2022, Graham Marshall, who supports us at the show shoutout level. Stick around after we're done talking about the season of COVID to hear how Graham managed to piss off an entire arena full of Thai people by simply laying down. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons like Graham also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, where Greg, after a Christmas trip to the north, apologized to Chiang Mai for previous statements saying he didn't enjoy the city, discussed whether Greg was doing his son a disservice by not pumping up Christmas to similar levels that he enjoyed as a kid, and did another episode of Weed Watch.
Weed Watch.
To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
I don't know why, whenever I hear you say Weed Watch, I have to just follow with Weed Watch. It's sort of like after Borat came out and someone said my wife, you have to automatically go, my wife.
Well, Weed Watch is a very important segment, and unfortunately, it's just as confusing as always, but it's worth listening.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to 2022, everyone, the first episode of the new year. We hope you're all safe and happy wherever you are. And I think I'm not going out on a limb here when I say we've all got our fingers crossed that this year will be better than the last 2 years, which have been basically a giant crap sandwich that we've all had to eat. However, we are not out of the woods yet, which will become abundantly clear in a minute. Because for this episode, we can't not talk about the elephant in the room, which is Thailand's ongoing battle to keep Omicron at bay, how its decision to end Thailand Pass applications has affected Thailand residents who are traveling during the holidays, and we're also going to check in with a few friends from around the world who have been caught up in the purgatory of international bureaucracy. So with that positive outlook out of the way, Ed, how you doing? How you doing there in Ohio?
Well, I'm surviving here in Ohio. I've got a fairly incredible story to tell, to be perfectly honest. I can't believe the shit that's happened to me, like, since I've come here. Like, it's honestly been an unbelievable Christmas experience. But I think you wanted to, I'll tell my story last. Why don't we check in with some of our listeners and hear about their experiences?
Yeah, actually, I mean, one of the things that it seems like a lot of people had in common is as soon as they left Thailand, their entire plans got just completely shredded, and there are people overseas who are stuck and don't know what's going on or how they're going to get back here. Like our buddy Ash, who we've talked about on the show before, and I called him at his job, which happens to be on a boat off the east coast of the United States. So here's a quick conversation I had with Ash where he gives us an update about how he's going to get back here to his Isan farm. All right, Ashley, our buddy who's on the east coast of the U.S. right now. Exactly where are you, man?
I'm about halfway between Boston and Bar Harbor, Maine, towing a barge about, I don't know, 15 miles offshore in wintertime.
Oh, damn. So we've talked about you on the show before because when we first met, you were flying back and forth between the U.S. and Thailand like every 3 weeks because you and your wife have a farm up here.
Yeah, that's right. That was back pre-COVID when, things were, normal, but then we were separated for about 10 months, when COVID first hit, because I couldn't get a visa because we were not married yet. And then I was back here working for about 6 months. We were separated when quarantine was 2 weeks, just because it didn't really, it didn't make a lot of sense to go over there and quarantine for 2 weeks and then stay for 2 weeks and then come back.
Right.
And then most recently, I was all set to come back in January and do the test and go. But then, we kind of got that rug pulled out from underneath us, a week or two ago. So my work schedule is 2 weeks working 24/7 and then 2 weeks off. So you're correct. Previously, when everything was fine, I was back and forth every 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks.
Right.
But right now, since we're back to 1 week quarantine again, it'll probably be several months, before I can take off a big whack of time. It makes it worthwhile to quarantine for a week and go up north and, stay for several weeks to do work and, see my family and then come back here.
Right. So it's just a perfect example of how the changing Thailand pass rules is just, as you said, pulled the rug out from under you and sort of stranded you in your main home away from your second home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that I'm stuck at work. We've engineered it that way. We've talked about it a number of times, and my wife is very supportive. She said, "Look, if you're going to get stuck somewhere, get stuck at work." But it's gone from initially it was heartbreaking. We were separated for 10 months, which was very difficult at the very beginning, and then we were separated for 6 months, and we're like, okay, we can do this. It's not nice, but we can do it. And now we had just last month we had gotten excited about, hey, things are going back to normal, so it's going to be back to 2-2, and hopefully I'll see you here in a couple of weeks. And then it was rudely taken away from us. So now we're back to, I don't know, maybe it'll be a month, maybe it'll be 2 months. Depends on work. It depends on what kind of announcements they make here after the 4th of the New Year. So we're back to, we don't know. I'll see you when I see you.
That's kind of a crappy thing to have in a wedding, right? Like, well, I'll see you whenever.
But what I was getting at is, it's at the beginning we were like, oh my God, this is the worst possible thing we can ever think of, to now we're just, we kind of laugh about it and make jokes and like, all right, this is the way it's got to be for now. So.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, man. You can't let the vagaries of Thai bureaucracy get you down, especially in the middle of a bloody pandemic and stuff. You become somewhat of an expert with paperwork. Is all the hoops you've got to jump through to get over here, even during normal times.
Well, I'm really fortunate in that, again, back when things were normal, I'm not staying longer than 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So I'm going back and forth on a tourist visa. So I don't usually have to do any extra paperwork. It's just once COVID started, then it was applying for real visas or applying for visa extensions. The Udon Thani immigration office that we have to deal with is, I would say, I don't know, can I say more fickle than most?
Yes, you can.
I mean, it's a border outpost. So you're at the whims of, whatever happened to that guy at home that morning or what he's feeling like.
That's right.
But we're really eager for, at least for immigration procedures, to be back to normal, and for quarantine to either go to the test and go or to hopefully go away completely.
Yeah. Well, man, I thought it'd be good to check in with you because you and others that we chat to on this show, and even that we don't chat to, are sort of avatars for, I think, a lot of people around the world that are just kind of stranded in between one bureaucratic system and the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm an example of people that we're going to come hell or high water. We'll jump through whatever hoops it takes, for obvious reasons. But
right.
I can't imagine somebody that's just on the fence thinking, yeah, maybe we should go, maybe we shouldn't. What do you think, honey? it's a lot to digest, and as you know, it changes every single day.
Right. Well, man, I wish you the best of luck in getting back here, and look forward to sharing a beer when you're back in town. So keep us posted.
All right, will do, Greg. Thanks for the call. It's nice to break up the monotony out here driving at night.
Driving a tugboat at night. That's got to be weird.
We look for big boats on a radar, and we look for little boats out the window with our eyes. We got 6 hours of that twice a day.
All right, man. Well, have as much fun with that as you can.
All right. Have a great afternoon, Greg. I'll talk to you soon, bud. Bye.
Take it easy, brother. So all things considering, Ash is not doing too bad. I mean, he's still at work. He's healthy, but he's just sort of basically got to wait around until Thailand reinstitutes its Thailand Pass program.
That's right. So my situation, my first drama I dealt with, you basically saved my ass, and I got to say thank you. So I was watching Thai news, and there was some discussion of them changing the Thailand Pass requirements. So I was being very relaxed about it. We've talked about it so much on the show, what a big deal it was for Thailand to reopen. And this shows you after 20 years what little I've learned, because it wasn't even on my radar that they might just close the doors again.
Oh, yeah.
It really wasn't on my radar. So, I was already here in the States, but I had not applied for my Thailand Pass yet to come back.
Oh, so you figured like, I'm there and I've got plenty of time to do it. I'll just do it from overseas.
Yeah, I wasn't that worried about it. I was actually going to do it after Christmas. And then you and I were chatting, and you said to me, dude, they're changing the Thailand Pass, and midnight is the deadline.
Yeah, I sent you a message. I'm like, you've got like 6 hours until they shut it
so
down.
I was here in Ohio, and it was in the morning, and basically I had a few hours to do my Thailand Pass, and this led to a whole separate drama, because when I did the Thailand Pass application, there was a requirement that you have $50,000 of COVID insurance, right? I have insurance through my university, and then they also purchase COVID insurance on top of that. But
Right.
they never sent me the policy. So I didn't know if that counted as enough coverage. So here I've got hours to get my application in, and I don't know if I meet the insurance requirements. So I filled out the whole application, gave them my Thai insurance documentation, and submitted it. And then I was trying to reach my boss, so so now it's like in the evening. I guess it would have been on the 22nd or whatever. It's in the evening, and I'm trying to find out what the insurance requirements is. And when I finally reach my boss, she goes through the documents, and it's less than $50,000.
Oh, man.
So basically, I have submitted an application that's going to get rejected. And so then I have to get online and start looking to buy travel insurance. Now, I was surprised, in all honesty. I was shocked at how easy it was. So I was worried, like, oh my God, this is going to take days, or this is going to be impossible. But travel insurance, I'm showing how untraveled I am. Travel insurance is ridiculously easy to buy. So I find this page where I can get insurance, and all I want is to satisfy the $50,000 COVID coverage. That's all I care about. So cool. It costs $56. To be, in all honesty, it took 10 minutes. And boom, I had a new policy.
Man, that must have been a huge relief, because all this time the clock is ticking, right? Like you're got 4 hours left.
So then I figured I'd be allowed to update my application. So because they give you a link to check the status, and I thought I'd be able to go in and edit it and put in my new insurance information. But guess what? You cannot edit your application once it's been submitted.
I'm shocked.
So I'm sweating, and I'm thinking, maybe I'm not sure if they're going to let me submit a new one, because it's under the same name, passport number.
Right.
But luckily, you can submit multiple applications. So I had to start from scratch again, redo the whole application, put in all the information, and then at the end, I attached my new insurance policy.
Nice.
So now I had 2 applications in. By all rights, the first one should be rejected, and the second one should be accepted, and that's exactly what happened. So 2 days later, I get an email. Your application has been rejected. And I'm like, okay, don't panic. And actually, about 15 minutes later, I get another email. Your application has been accepted.
Oh, nice. And this was so this would have been December 24th?
Yeah, like basically this was like the 23rd, 24th. They processed it pretty quickly. So
right.
What I found out is that I would be able to go back to Thailand on, I'm supposed to fly back January 2nd. I would be able to get back in as long as I have a negative PCR test within 72 hours.
All right. Problem solved.
But there's a rather large Kim Kardashian-sized but to my story.
How dare you?
The problem is this. So I have not been back for a family Christmas in more than 20 years. My mother is 86 years old, and she is sick. And I'm not going to go into the details of that. But this Christmas was set up to be this extremely important Christmas for my family. And that's why I made this trip. And considering my mother's age and her health condition, I wanted to be extremely careful about not getting her sick and, not bringing COVID from the airplane into her household. And so of course I had to do a COVID test before I left Thailand. I couldn't get on the plane, so I had a negative test before I left Thailand. On day one after I arrived, I tested myself negative. On the second day, I tested myself negative. And then on the third day, I tested myself negative. So now I've had 4 negative tests in a row, and I'm free and clear. And I go visit my mother. I see my family. We start making Christmas plans. I see my friends. Everything's good, except for the fact that northeastern Ohio and my county, where Cleveland is called Cuyahoga County. It turns out it's in the middle of one of the worst COVID outbreaks on planet Earth.
Yeah, that's what I read.
So it's like on CNN. Yeah. So I didn't even know this. I made these Christmas plans just based on what's going on with my family. Like I wasn't thinking about, I'm going into the middle of the worst place on Earth for COVID. After I'm here a few days, I'm watching the news, I'm watching the Cleveland news, and they're like, 20% of the entire population has already tested positive. And so obviously if 20% have tested positive, like the infection rate is much higher.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm being careful, even though I've tested negative, I'm like masking, I'm being careful, but I'm running around town. I'm seeing family and friends. I'm going shopping. I'm doing whatever, getting ready for Christmas. Christmas Eve, I'm scheduled to go have dinner with my mom and just a couple family members. And then the next day is the big, massive Christmas with, 30 people from my entire family, right?
Right.
So a couple hours before I go off to dinner, I figure, I might as well be extra careful. I'm going to take one more test just for shits and giggles, just to be extra safe. I've got no symptoms. I feel fine. I've already tested negative 3 times. Okay?
Yeah.
So, dude, I'm reading the instructions, and it says there's going to be a blue line, which is the control line, and then if you test positive, there's going to be a pink line. And it says, look very closely because even a faint pink line means you're positive.
Yeah.
And I have no expectation that I could possibly be positive, right? And so
I think I see where this is going.
So I do the test. I dip the thing into the fluid, and it turns bright pink immediately. like just immediately there's a bright pink line, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what?
A pink flash went off like a flash bang grenade of pinkness.
I don't even know how to express how shocked I was. It was like a joke. I almost started laughing because I was getting ready. You have to leave the test strip in for 10 minutes. So they said wait 10 minutes and see if there's even a faint pink line. So I'm getting ready to wait, and I dip it in and it turns bright pink immediately.
Oh,
so I was like raging positive, and I have no symptoms. And so this is what I'm finding out. I come all the way from Thailand, and I've already told on the show how I had to straighten out all this immigration stuff in order to leave Thailand and get a re-entry. So I went through all of this.
You're dropping tests behind you as you go, leaving little breadcrumbs of COVID tests from one side of the planet to the other, all negative.
And then here I am hours before going to Christmas Eve dinner, and I tested positive. I honestly, I still can't believe it right now. I still can't believe it.
That's a bummer, man. That must have been
oh my God,
a hugely deflating moment.
I mean, so basically I had to contact my family and tell them I'm positive. And then I couldn't go to Christmas with my family. I missed it.
Oh, that's sorry, man. That sucks.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the trip, according to the CDC, I had to isolate for 10 days, which was the entire rest of my trip. So not only was I finding out that I couldn't go to Christmas, I was finding out that I was going to be alone for 10 days in Ohio, unable to like hang out with family and friends anymore.
Right. Oh man, that sucks. The whole reason after 20 years.
That's right.
To go back for Christmas.
Just an absolute complete nightmare. Now, to even give the story more of a crazy twist, when I got that rapid positive test at home,
Yeah.
I could not believe it. I was like, this cannot be right. I'm asymptomatic. I've had negative tests. It can't be right. And so I decided I had to run out to a lab to get a proper PCR test, which is more accurate. So essentially, I had to find a lab on Christmas Eve where I could take a test, and I knew a lab that did a rapid PCR test where you get results within 3 hours. And I knew that the test had to be a mistake. The one I took at home, I was like, this can't be right. And of course, I checked my phone. It's 1:15 p.m. and because it's Christmas Eve, the lab closes at 2 p.m.
Jesus.
Okay. And so I'm trying to get a negative test so I can spend it with my family, right? So I order an Uber. Because I can't drive here. I'm waiting for the Uber guy to come. It's projected on the Uber app that I'm going to get there at 1:53. Okay.
Oh my God.
Now,
dude,
on the way to the lab, my sister sends me a message and says, "I called the lab and they've closed early. They're already closed."
Man.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, I don't know. I called them. They have a message that they're closed already and that you shouldn't come. Like maybe because we're in the middle of a COVID outbreak. And so she was basically saying, hey, the lab has been overwhelmed. They closed early. So I'm thinking about turning my Uber around. But then I'm like, well, it's 10 more minutes. I might as well just see. But sure enough, I get to the lab at 1:55, right? And it's dark and it's locked. So I'm just utterly dejected. I just took this home test, which is positive, but I think it's wrong. But I have no way to verify that. So I'm sitting on the curb.
Crying.
More or less. I'm utterly dejected, trying to figure out what to do. And this car speeds up, stops, and a man and a woman get out. Okay? And they rush over to the door, and the woman finds out it's locked. And I say, it's locked. I already tried to get in. And she goes, I have an appointment at 2 p.m. They can't lock. I've got to fly. I need to get a COVID test. And I'm like, I'm with you. But, I got here 5 minutes ago and they're closed. She started pounding on the door.
Oh, man.
Okay. So
she's a bit more insistent than you.
Yeah. She's banging on the door. And I'm sitting there going, it's pointless. Like, we're doomed. I'm like totally in this negative, dejected. I'm like, this is like
Cheyenne lady.
Yeah. I'm like, we're doomed, And sure enough, a guy comes out from inside the lab. He comes to the door. And I'm like, holy shit. So he opens up the door crack and says, I'm very sorry, but we're closed. And she says, that's not possible. Like, I have an appointment at 2 p.m. And he says, I'm just the technician. I don't do appointments. I'm very sorry, but we're closed. And he goes to close the door. And man, she was assertive. She was like an American woman. She was like an American. She's like, this is not right. I have an appointment at 2 p.m. Your hours used to be listed as 5 p.m., but you changed it to 2 p.m. and you did not give me any kind of notice. You did not cancel my appointment. This is not right.
Damn.
And the guy's standing there. And he's hesitating, and she goes, I have to fly tomorrow. Like, what am I going to do? And I can see the guy wavering a little bit, and he opens up the door a little bit and like kind of motions to let her and her guy in. And then I'm just standing there like a homeless dog on the street, right? And he looks at me and he goes, what's your deal, sir?
What's your deal, sir?
He goes, what's your deal? Like, what do you look so sad about? And I just said like, well, I got here at 5 to 2 and your website says you close at 2 p.m. And he goes, all right, come in. So I'm like, oh my God. So nice. I get in. Okay. He closes the door, locks it, turns out the lights and says, stay away from the windows. He doesn't want anyone else to come in there.
Fair enough, man. It's Christmas Eve. Dude's got to go home.
Right. So the bottom line is I get this proper lab test. I message my family and I tell them, I'm sure my home test was wrong. Now I'm going to get a proper lab test. There's still hope. I'm going to be able to go to Christmas. And then I was chatting with you on Messenger when I got the email. and it was positive in the end. So I'm really positive, man. And it's the oddest thing because I'm not sick.
No symptoms.
Well, I mean, like to me, I feel exactly the same as I always feel. So maybe my mild allergy symptoms are really COVID. I'm not sure, but I basically feel fine, completely fine.
Wow. Well, that's still a bummer, man. It's a bummer that you got the Thailand pass and you're like, yay, I did it, I can go back in. Then it's a bummer you got the positive test and you're like, well, it's probably wrong. And then it's a bummer you got the additional test that confirmed you were positive. And
I don't think it's been a waste, only because I did get to see my mom and did get to see my family, but obviously it's not the trip I expected to have. Now there's one positive thing that happened, which is that the CDC, the United States CDC, announced that they are reducing the isolation period from 10 days to 5 days for asymptomatic people. So this was great news. So I was in isolation for 3 days, and the CDC says you only need to do 5. So this was good news. So yesterday, I actually came out of isolation, which means I can leave my place, and I'm still asymptomatic. Now, I'm in a weird situation because I need to have a negative PCR test, a negative lab test, before I can leave the country. Thailand won't let me back in unless I have a negative PCR test. So essentially tomorrow morning, because I'm supposed to leave in 4 days, tomorrow morning I'm going into a lab. I'm going to take a piece. Actually, I'm going back to the same lab that I snuck into last time. I'm going back,
old buddy.
Yeah, I'm going back in there. I'm going to take a PCR test, and I'm scared that after essentially it's been about a week, I'm scared I might still test positive. Dude, if I test positive, even though I feel fine, I cannot take my flight. I lose my Thailand pass, and I'm locked out of Thailand.
Well, that's the big issue, isn't it? Because now if you don't get the Thailand pass, if you are positive, if something doesn't happen, if your insurance is wrong or something like that, you are now not allowed back in Thailand unless you do a 2-week quarantine in Phuket.
That's right. The only way back in is through the Phuket sandbox. So I had a conversation with my boss last night, and I told her I might test positive on Friday and I won't be back. And luckily, she basically said it would be okay for me to teach my classes from Ohio until Thailand reopens. And so it's odd. So I don't know how long I'm going to test positive. Like I've been reading online that some people are asymptomatic and they test positive for weeks.
Well, on that note, let's check in with another friend. Well, I'm not going to say myself. Let's check in with our buddy Scott, who is a sometime co-host of the podcast when Ed's not around. And we are going to talk to him from his parents' house on the west coast of Canada.
Hi, Greg. Thanks very much. Always good to be on the Bangkok podcast, but this time from another continent and in a place that is currently a few degrees below zero with about half a meter of snow. I'm at my parents' place in Nanaimo, Canada, that is on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, I mean, Calgary is minus 30 something. You got an unusual amount of snow. It looks like you guys are getting hammered.
Yeah. I've been shoveling. I haven't shoveled in well over 20 years, but I went out and shoveled sidewalk the last 2 days, which was quite fun. I felt like I'd done a good deed and gotten a good workout, but I would not want it to be a regular part of my yearly routine.
No doubt. So this show is all about how COVID is just sort of screwing up a lot of people's plans, and you are caught up in this as well. So can you just like walk us through what happened and what the next steps are for you guys?
Yeah, so the quick one is, like a lot of people have been wanting to get back to my home country to see family. My parents are getting a bit older, and the two things that would enable that were being fully vaccinated. So being able to return to Canada, you have to be fully vaccinated to avoid quarantine. So check. Thank you. Thai Health System did a good job on that. And then basically no 2-week quarantine or even no week quarantine on returning to Thailand. So they came out with Test and Go on November 1st. And my Singaporean wife and I thought, okay, now's the time. It should be noted as well, I work in Thailand. So I have a work permit. I work for a fairly well-known company there, pay Thai taxes. This will factor in later in my gripe a little bit, but flew to Canada on December 10th. We are to get on an airplane on January 8th to head back to Canada. We're having a great trip here. We're spending a couple days in Vancouver with my cousin. Didn't have a laptop, but I check email every day, and I suddenly got a note at 5:30 a.m. Vancouver time from somebody that I worked with in Thailand saying, oh, they're closing the Test and Go application at midnight Thailand time, which was 3.5 hours away. So suddenly this very narrow window of time to try and file, which of course now I'm kicking myself, like, why didn't I just apply, the day I got here? I just honestly thought, well, the rules are changing. They were even talking about reducing the testing requirements,
Right.
when I left. So I just thought, well, yeah, we'll give it until a week and a half before we're coming back and then just submit it, right? There was no real sense of urgency. And so then, yeah, that's where I was at 5:30 in the morning, learning that this thing was going to close in 3.5 hours.
Yeah, Ed was caught up in the similar situation too, but he got his in just under the deadline and got approved. But of course, as we heard, he fell into some other roadblocks. But so basically, you asked for permission to come back into Thailand because they were closing the window, and what happened?
Well, yeah. So to be fair, I guess I'm not sure exactly how many hours notice were given from when they said, look, we're going to close this testing system at midnight on the 22nd. And when I learned about it, that said, I don't think it was very much. Like, my guess is half a day at the most, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I checked the news most days. I had my phone, my wife had her phone. And so we got up and then we're suddenly trying to think, okay, how can we file this on our phones? And get it done. So we both went to the pages. We attached passports, those kind of things. The challenge came in at you having to submit a letter showing proof of prepaid hotel booking, limo transfer, and PCR test, right?
Right.
So with the time change, I'm 15 hours behind. So 8:30 a.m. 5:30 a.m. is 8:30 p.m. in Thailand. So by the time I really get around to hotels, it's 9 p.m. in Thailand, right?
Yeah.
So any sales departments, any sales teams at hotels are no longer working. So I did go onto a platform that I use to book hotels regularly, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to book one here. They'll have the whole package. It turned out there was no packages on that hotel platform. You could book a hotel room, but you couldn't book and pay for the limo transfer and the test. And then I quickly then went to hotel sites directly, and we just couldn't find any. And we did then make a bunch of Skype calls. Luckily, I have Skype with prepaid credit on my phone. I called, I think, 4 different hotels in Bangkok. Again, it's 9 p.m., it's 9:30.
Oh, Jesus
this
Christ.
time's creeping along. And understandably, all the hotels said, oh, well, we can process, but not until tomorrow. Like, there's no staff here. And I think they need to get a code or a number from the government. I think the hotel needs to put some request and they get a code or something. So basically, we have everything. We have airline tickets. And again, we got to get back to work so we can start paying Thai taxes. And so I just book a room on an online platform. And I think for now, I'll submit this, right? I'll submit the hotel booking paid, and then we'll, tomorrow morning or whenever, we'll arrange the other payment and get this letter.
Right.
So we both file it and go to bed at 8:30 a.m. Then we've been up. It took us 3 hours, so we're up 3 hours. A couple days later, my wife gets an email saying your Thailand pass has been approved. Great. I'm like, oh, fantastic, right? Like, this is happening. And nothing for me. I wait a couple more days, nothing for me. And then I just get a note saying your application has been rejected due to not providing proof of prepaid limo and PCR test. Please add. And then it said you can add and resubmit document on this site, but the site is just the Thailand Pass site, and they're no longer accepting applications after midnight on December 22nd. So basically the thing that really, there's a couple elements to me that really upset me on this one. And I've lived in Thailand over 20 years, so I'm well familiar with things being said and retracted. But I really think this is a bit different in my mind. There's no way to add that document. So, the narrow window they gave to apply, and due to wherever you are in the world, it was literally impossible for me to get that letter at that moment. But there's no way for me to add that to my application. Like, here it is, right? Like, everything, all my ducks are in a row, but here it is now. And because they just send you that website, like, please refile under this website, but the website's closed for application. So these are also non-refundable, these hotel, transport, PCR tests, right? Like, these are, so I've now resubmitted it to that email address. I've had no response. Somebody today just shared a line ID for a Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've just sent that. And so I'm waiting, I'm hoping. Really, all you're looking for is somebody to connect the dots that, like, hey, here's my application number. Yeah. And all that it says was missing was this letter, which I have, and also my non-Thai wife, who we're flying together, and we obviously live together, is approved. Like,
how come she got approved and you didn't?
You tell me, Greg. The great mystery of any of this. It was probably an automatic system, and I don't know. But yeah, she's cool, and so we're scheduled to fly on January 8th, and we have to do a PCR test on January 6th. So we'll continue with that, and just fingers crossed. I did hear from someone well placed that they are not going to reopen Test and Go on January 4th. I mean, the hope is they do, and then make another rapid application should I not hear anyone. But I did hear that they are probably not going to extend that. And the other thing is, even, someone said, well, just change your airline ticket and go to Phuket. But you can't. My flight is from Vancouver, Japan, Bangkok. Currently, you cannot transit in Bangkok to a flight to Phuket right under the Sandbox scheme. You have to arrive directly in Phuket. So that would mean an entirely new airline ticket for me. And Air Canada doesn't offer flights to Phuket. I did find one the other day, but via Kuala Lumpur for $5,000 and 30 some hours, but my return ticket was $1,030. So it starts to become impractical.
But it sounds like a perfect storm of just time zones and bureaucracy and communication and IT. Just everything failed at the same time, and it sounds like a nightmare, man.
I guess where I have the problem, Greg, is I've loved Thailand. I've provided over the years, without boasting, I've provided employment for all kinds of people. I've brought tons of tourists to the country. I've paid taxes for 20 years. I'm currently a work permit holder. I pay taxes. To not provide, at least a 48-hour window to get applications in, to me at the very least, is just extremely rude. I don't know I can't come up with the right word, but it's just rude, and it's really almost nasty to me, because the Thai government has opened up the country November 1st, like, hey, we have Test and Go, come and travel, spend money, Thailand's open, blah, blah, blah. So there's all kinds of travelers that in good faith have booked airline tickets. I've read about them online. They've booked airline tickets, and suddenly, oh, I can't come to Thailand, or the system rejects them, or whatever it is, right, based on who knows what, kind of like my circumstance, and there's no way to modify it. So now what do they do with those tickets? For the traveler, I think any credibility that Thai Tourism Board or Thailand has is out the window. Like, why would you go and book a trip in a couple months down the road? And then for me, again, like, to not provide at least 48-hour window, like, just why not? And so now, like, I'm just not letting it bother me. I somehow feel it's like I'll get back one way or another, but it's just unnecessary to every day be thinking about this on my trip home too. So I think it's a real bad situation, man, and horribly mismanaged, and just quite rude and ignorant to people.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're caught up in it, man. But the one thing that you keep seeing it over and over again the longer you're here is that Thailand has so much potential that it is not capturing, and every time a big system comes in, or a big change, or a big whatever, it just seems that they shoot themselves in the foot, make more work than is necessary, cause more problems than is necessary. And it doesn't have to be like this, and it's just a bummer to see over and over and over again, especially when you're stuck in the middle of it.
There's just, at this point, it's a real helpless feeling. There's 3 phone numbers that have been shared. People don't answer that phone. People haven't responded to the email. So, like, I've got everything. Technically, I've got everything, but just I need someone to look at it and connect the dots, and just the why again. The why. Like, you've said one thing, and then you don't honor that or provide a reasonable window for people to adapt to the changing circumstances.
Yeah, now granted, playing devil's advocate, we're only seeing one side of the picture here. I imagine there's a lot we don't know on the other side that's going on, but still, man, from our perspective, it doesn't provide a lot of confidence, and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't make these stories get out, and it just doesn't make people eager to come to Thailand when they see how badly everyone's getting stranded and stuck in limbo and don't know what's going to happen.
Like, to me, that's just incredibly disingenuous and inconsiderate. And so regardless of what's going on the other side, I think providing like a 48-hour to 5-day window for people that have, in good faith, based on the country encouraging them to travel, is grossly unfair.
Well said, man. Well, I hope you sort it out quickly and without too much extra cost and stress. I know you'll be here eventually, but I hope it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Well, stay warm, buddy, and keep shoveling that snow, getting that exercise, make lemonade out of lemons, et cetera, and we'll see you when you're back here for a nice cool beer.
Thanks, Greg. You too.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Wow, I feel bad for Scott. I know exactly how he feels. Now, technically, what the Thai government has said is they've they've paused the test and go part of the reentry. So maybe that means that it won't be long before they unpause it. I feel as if the government is waiting to see what happens with Omicron. Because essentially what's going on here in Ohio is what Thailand is afraid of. Like I told you here, it's just insane, like how widespread it is. Now, luckily, Omicron is less serious. I'm a pretty good example of that since I have no symptoms. But for example, my niece tested positive and she has bad symptoms. And so,
really?
So for some people, it is serious, of course. So it's still a serious thing. And of course, you have to be worried about infecting other people. So my positive test, it prevented me from going to Christmas with my family, but I might have saved my family members, including my mom. So, so I'm glad I know that I was positive. I'm not happy I tested positive, but I'm glad I know that, so I didn't go. But I guess we just have to wait for the Thai government. Maybe, I have my fingers crossed that tomorrow I test negative, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
I think we're in a bit of a knife edge right now because after 2 years of this and repeated lockdowns and economies sort of in the toilet, and on top of that, Omicron appears to be less severe for most people who get it.
Right.
I think, let me read a message I got from a buddy of mine today. I won't say his name, but he wrote, he said, "Let's just get this over with. I've had 3 shots, sacrificed most of my life savings, invested everything I have to keep the business going, sold my art, mortgaged my condo, groveled and begged and pleaded with everybody from employees to courts to banks to suppliers. I've done everything I can do. I've done my part and there are millions like me. Just time to get this over with." And he said in another message, he's like, if we go into like another full lockdown, there's, people just can't take much more of this. And I'm pro-vaccine. I'm pro-mask. I'm generally pro-lockdown-ish if it's necessary. We've talked about that before. But, man, like, we just can't keep shutting the entire world down every time there's a scare.
Yeah, agreed.
This is not sustainable. So
agreed.
Hopefully the Thailand government will just sort of be like, you know what? We've got to get these vaccination numbers up. We're doing pretty good. We just kind of have to let the chips fall where they may.
Agreed. I mean, I agree with that 100%. And basically, the show next week might be from Bangkok for me, or we might be doing another long-distance show from Ohio. We'll have to wait and see.
That's crazy, man. Well, I wish there's something I can do, man. But there isn't. Any moral support, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's worth something.
I guess so. Well, there's just a couple of examples with Scott and Ash and Ed about what's going on out there. And we hope if you're listening to this, you are not stuck, stranded, or, otherwise laid up and unable to get back into Thailand, because it sounds like a really messy situation. It's sort of a mix between medical restrictions, bureaucratic nightmares, and a lot of unknown questions on both sides of the
For sure.
aisle. So, yeah, we hope everyone's doing okay out there. Man, what a weird show that was.
COVID Christmas. What can I say?
COVID Christmas. All right, well, let's do Love, Loathe, or Live With, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. On the last show, guest host Scott asked me what I thought about fast talkers on the phone. So this week, it's my turn to ask something of Ed.
Cool.
All right, Ed, now you don't drive much, but this is still something that affects people who are walking, or I guess in a car at all. But have you ever been walking down the street or driving down the street and you come around the corner at nighttime and there is a insanely bright LED billboard flashing some innocuous stuff?
Yeah.
Now, I find it hard to believe that anyone would love these, but do you find them sort of like easy to block out, not annoying, or do you?
I mean, they're obviously annoying. I mean, you're right. I mean, you said it already. I don't drive much, but every time I see that, I just wonder how people could drive past it, because it's so distracting. It's a little bit of it's a little bit analogous to the oddly loud music you sometimes hear, like in markets, where you're just like, well, that is just inappropriately loud. But you're right; those those signs that you're talking about, they should be at night. They should be turned down or something. It's like they're so bright.
Right. Well, what got me thinking about this was a story on coconuts about how they put up a billboard on Tonglaw, and it was just this giant illegally constructed LED billboard right across the road from people's houses and condos and buildings.
Oh my gosh, right.
It was like that old Seinfeld episode. I'm not sure if you remember, where they build a Kenny Rogers Roasters across the street from Kramer's apartment, and his entire apartment is bathed in this red neon glow.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's there must be So do you think this is another example of there are regulations that prohibit it, but they're unenforced? Is that your guess?
Yes, actually, the Coconuts article does go into that, about how it was, like it did go against some building code or something, and they're going to take it down. But, it reminded me a few weeks ago, I was walking home at night, and I turned around a corner, and there was just this like an obnoxiously bright flashing light, and it lit up the entire street. And I mean, Thai advertising companies are already really good at filling any available space with advertising crap.
That's right.
But
that's right.
To have it blinking and flashing at the volume of the sun is just, it's a hard loathe from me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can't really do anything about it, but I'll put myself in the loathe category. There's just no point. It's just inappropriately bright. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go into a dark room and close your eyes for about 10 minutes, and then turn on your phone flashlight and put it right in front of your eye, and then open it. And then that's pretty much what it's like. No, don't do that. We're not recommending that. Bangkok Podcast does not recommend doing that.
That's right. Okay. Double loathe then.
Double loathe.
Okay. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Graham Marshall for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. Greg, what did you find out about Graham?
Well, I've talked to Graham a bunch of times on our Discord server, and he seems like a lovely guy. And it's funny because he told a story that made me think he's a total badass, because it's not something that I would ever do. I would ever be brave enough to do. But the funny thing is that he didn't actually do anything to be such a badass. So he says, I'm actually very tall, 205.4 centimeters. That's tall.
Wow.
So from my first trip to Thailand to my second last trip, there have always been people wanting their photo taken with me. They said the difference last time is that it was all young girls that wanted their photo taken with my oldest son instead of me. Which is, as an aside, that's a painful realization that I also went through. I started my job a new job a while ago, and I was like, it'd be nice to meet all these, nice people and all these cool girls, and who knows what's going to happen. And they're like, one of the girls gave me a nickname of Uncle Greg. So I was like, oh no.
That's funny.
I'm the elderly uncle. So tell me what you think of this, and let me know if you could do this. He said, I did put my height to use on one trip when we visited a zoo in Thailand. I wanted to save seats for the elephant show, so I thought I would lay across the bench for the other members of my family who hadn't arrived yet. So other people started arriving, and eventually the place was filling up so much that people started telling me to move. I stayed still. Then I saw my family arrive, but they didn't see me, and by now people are really getting agitated about me lying across the bench. So I started waving and things, trying to attract my wife's attention, but she didn't see me. Eventually I just yelled out, "Hey!" and my wife saw me. So then she and the family come up. A round of applause breaks out for the Farang genius to save seats for his whole family.
That is a very funny story. That takes guts. I've tried to hold seats, but I've never had the guts to lay down over a bunch of seats.
That's pretty ballsy. I mean, but
it worked.
It worked, and I guess if you're a really tall guy, put it to use. But I'm not sure, because he said a round of applause breaks out for the Farang genius to save the seats for the whole family. Now I'm not sure if they were a real round of applause, like, hey, look at that smart guy, he's tall and he saved all those seats for his family. That's a great idea. Or if it was sort of like Nancy Pelosi giving Donald Trump the applause, sort of like
that's right,
the passive aggressive, like, oh, good job, genius.
It might have been like sarcastic applause. Who knows?
Sarcastic applause. But either way, Graham, I mean, props to you for doing it. I could never do that. I'd be so Grang Jai. I would never be able to.
That's right. That's right.
People yelling at me. You're a lot braver than I am. But yeah, man, thanks for the support. And hopefully if we meet up for a beer one day, we won't have to save seats and
thank you, Graham.
Lay across a table to save the Guinness for me.
Okay, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Right on. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail online that will feature on the show. By the way, we have a few left for those that have left them and have not heard your voice yet. Sorry, we're getting to them. I promise we'll get to them. Or you can even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Happy New Year. And we'll see you next week.
For sure.
What's going on in there?
What?
That light!
Oh, the red. Yeah, it's a chicken roaster sign. It's right across from my window.
Can't you shut the shades?
They are shut. Oh, by the way, your friend Seth, he stopped by.
Oh yeah, what do you have to say?
Yeah, he was fired.